Sound check one, two, three. Sound check one, two, three.
Good morning and welcome to the Planning Committee for February 24th, 2026. All electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. As we have quorum present, I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning Committee to order at 9:32 a.m. today. In chambers today, we have Councillor Beattie, Councillor Cooper, myself, Chair Taddison, Councillor M. Wilson, Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Wang, and Councillor Kassar. And online, we have Councillor Francis, Councillor Kretsch, and Councillor Pauls are away on city business today and will not be attending. There are no ceremonial activities. Clerk Kelsey, are there any addendum items to add to the agenda?
So the additions have been noted on the published agenda, and I'm just noting that includes the withdrawal of items 9.3, 12.1, and 12.2.
Thank you. Does the committee have any amendments to the agenda? May I have a mover and a seconder that the agenda be approved as presented? Councillor Beattie and Councillor Wang. Please indicate your hand vote now. That's unanimous. Thank you. Members of the committee, are there any declarations of interest? Not seeing any. Number 5, we're going to go to the approval of the previous minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes of February 3rd, 2026? Councillor Beattie, Councillor Wang, I think your hand was up. Yes, thank you. Please indicate with a hand vote. That's unanimous. Thank you. We have items for information. First item, 7.1, active official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision applications citywide. Any comments? And we also have 7.2, PED 2600, appeal of the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision applications for lands located at 448 Book Road, Ancaster. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the items 7.1 and 7.2? Councillor Wang, Councillor Cooper, thank you. Are there any discussion items on 7.1 or 7.2? I'm not seeing any. Okay, 7.2? Okay, 7.1, let's go to Councillor Cooper on 7.1. That's the zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications citywide.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about this. As I was reading through it, I noticed there's some proposals that pre-2024 and file. So just wondering what our benchmarks are in terms of what our turnaround times and service levels are. How does that all tie into this? If someone could please give me their insights on that as well. Through you, Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, Anita Fayback, excuse me, Acting Director of Planning and Chief Planner. So when we're looking at applications for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and plan of subdivision, there are legislative timeframes that are outlined in the Planning Act. So those are generally our first point of benchmark. There were process changes brought forward a couple of years ago that we responded to, and it was Bill 109, and it was the legislation around providing refunds. So our processes were modified and streamlined to be able to respond, to be able to process applications within those Planning Act timelines so that we didn't have to issue refunds. That legislation has changed. Refunds are no longer required, but that is still our target. And generally, we achieve that. The only time that we may extend it is when there's mutual agreement with an applicant to continue to work through issues on a file, to be able to bring forward a report where staff could recommend it and the applicant would be supportive of it. If it's an application that staff couldn't support, we would bring that forward within the legislative timeframes to make sure that council can make a decision before an applicant can appeal. So that's generally our benchmark in terms of this report and what we work to achieve. What we're planning on starting later this year, Q2 likely, is to start to publicly publish our files, our pipeline, so that we are able to demonstrate, what our timelines are, excuse me, and how we're measuring up against other municipalities.
Thank you, and I think that's excellent. That's exactly where I was going, is I do think we need to have public disclosure, so the fact that you're going there in Q2, I think is absolutely tremendous. And so when we start publishing it, we're going to publish what our, standard is or the benchmark we seek to achieve, and then we'll be measuring ourselves on maybe a monthly basis just to say where we are. Would I be interpreting that correctly?
Through the chair to the councillor, we're determining how we would publish that. Our hope is to have live time data through dashboarding.
Okay.
And then we would do a more detailed assessment and analysis perhaps once a year that would come to planning committee, that would get a little bit more into detail about the numbers and what we're seeing and what does it mean for the municipality.
Thank you. And so the public disclosure we'd be doing, how often would that be updated?
Through the chair to the councillor, I think we would still need to work through that. In terms of volume of application, ideally, it would be live time, like it would be updated on a daily basis. But I mean, it's certainly not my area of expertise, and that's something that we're working through with IT to determine how quickly that could happen.
Okay, because I would think even if something on a monthly basis, we just had some feedback in terms of what our experiences were in terms of our turnaround for that month, and just kind of have a regular time period like that. To me, the updating of the benchmarks doesn't have to be on a daily basis, but I think on a monthly basis, that would be reasonable, just give everybody a sense of where we are. So I like the direction you're going, and I think it's absolutely terrific. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? I can't hear you. Okay, Councillor Cassar, 7.2. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And 7.2 is a report just for information only. It's for an application at 448 Book Road in the Airport Employment Growth District in Ward 12. And you can read in the report that it has been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lack of a decision. I see that this application was deemed complete about a year ago. So my question to staff is just to provide a quick public overview on why a recommendation hasn't been brought to this committee. I see there's a long number of objections in the report, so if staff could just summarize that for public consumption, please. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Please identify yourself.
Through the chair, James Van Roy, Senior Planner.
Thanks, James.
Thank you for the question. I'll just give a quick who, what, where, when, and why. The applicants are Kierland. This is a who. The applicants are Kierland, 448 Book Road Limited. Their legal consultant is Denton's Canada. It's at 448. The location of the lands are 448 Book Road, just northwestish of the airport. And they applied for, of course, an official plan amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and ZBA on the lands. It's essentially to permit 5 industrial buildings, a road, a swim pond, and a natural heritage system. And they were proposing wetland compensation, of course. They filed the applications, as you mentioned earlier, in January of 2025, and it was deemed complete February 18th, 2025. And of course, the applicants have the right to appeal applications after 120 days if no decision has been made. So we were working with the applicants through the applications. Last time we met with them was in November of 2025. We're looking at some items that needed to be resubmitted and some issues that needed to be sorted out. And then we received an appeal shortly thereafter. So they appealed roughly 293 days after the application had been received. So our concerns at a high level are really just the land uses that are being proposed. They're proposing commercial uses in an employment area. The natural heritage component of the piece, they're trying to compensate 0.19 hectares of wetland with 0.19 hectares of wetland, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And as you may be aware, the city doesn't have any policies for compensation. We have transportation concerns. The TIS was not approved. And engineering concerns bringing services to the lands. The services exist further east in terms of sanitary and water, so they have to bring the pipes, an extension of services to the lands, which is west. And then there's, of course, infrastructure planning. We have roads and collector roads considered for this area through part of our AGD Transportation Master Plan update. And we haven't even begun the process for planning for those roads.
Yeah.
You good, Counselor?
Yeah, thank you very much. And just to summarize, I think it highlights the challenge that staff are up against when there's a very short period of time to review a very complicated application. And when those very important considerations can't be resolved and worked through, it can go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which puts this application on a very different course, removing municipal decision-making from the process. So that's where we're at. Appreciate the overview.
Thanks for those comments, Councillor Cassar. I'm going to throw the chair to Councillor M. Wilson. I do have a question as well. It basically, when I was reading through this, I thought it said that the zoning change aims to modify existing classifications to site-specific airside industrial zone. So for me, what my understanding is that airside is, it must be located on the inside of the airport fence, basically. And when I look at where this property is, it's nowhere near that. Is that a possibility that they could actually get airside even though they're not beside the airport?
Through the chair, just allow me 1 second, because the airport lands, I don't believe that it might be directly adjacent to the airport, but yeah, those airside industrial land uses typically are airport-related industrial uses. Warehouses or airport hangars, those sorts of uses that are very supportive towards the airport. So I imagine on the south side of those lands, we probably have some airport light industrial, and they're looking to introduce business park use, lumber supply establishment, and a convention center, conference convention center, which are commercial uses that.
Okay then, but just for clarity, I'll go through the chair again. To me, airside has direct access to runways, and the location of this, I'm trying to understand, will they have access to direct runways if they're successful in getting this designation? And we'll go to the chief planner.
Through the chair to the councillor, my recollection is that some of the properties that were immediately adjacent to the airport were given that airside zoning. It doesn't imply that they will have direct access to the airport. That is something that would need to be worked through with the airport themselves.
Okay, thank you for that clarification then. I'll take the chair back. I'm not seeing anybody else on my list of speakers, so please indicate with your hand vote now. That's unanimous. And welcome to Councillor Nan online. So the public has been advised of how to pre-register to be a delegate at the public meetings on today's agenda. If a specified person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the council, City of Hamilton to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but specified person or public body does not make an oral submission at public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the specified person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a specified person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the specified person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. We're going to public hearings now. 8.1, PED 2600, application for a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 338 and 338 and 1/2 Cumberland Avenue, Hamilton, and that's in Ward 3. Does the committee wish to see a staff presentation? Councillor Nan, of course, we will have that staff presentation.
Good morning, Chair, Planning Committee, and the members of public. I'm Dhruv Mehta, and I'm a Planner 2 in Development Planning. I'm going to present a recommendation report for a zoning bylaw amendment today for 338 and 338.5 Cumberland Avenue, Hamilton. So this slide is an aerial image showing the single detached dwelling at the front and vacant at the rear. This property is approximately 0.31 hectares in size with frontage along Cumberland Avenue. This slide is a location map showing the zoning of the property. The subject lands are currently zoned urban protected residential 1 and 2 family dwellings district and restricted light industrial district in the former City of Hamilton zoning bylaw 6593. And also showing on the slide is the zoning of surrounding area, which consists of low density residential zone in the north, light and limited heavy industrial district in the south, urban protected residential 1 and 2 family dwellings district, and restricted light residential district in the east and the west. And this application basically is for a zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning from urban protected residential 1 and 2 family dwellings district and restricted light industrial district to low density multiple dwellings district under the former City of Hamilton zoning bylaw 6593, which will allow the applicant to build a 3.5-story 12-stack house townhouse multiple dwelling units. This is a concept plan showcasing the proposed location on the site for development of 12 stacked house dwelling units. This slide basically is a concept plan showing the front, side, and the rear elevations of the proposed development. This is a frontal view of the picture of the subject property. This is a view of the property which is a single detached dwelling on the east. This is single detached dwellings on the north. And these are the single detached dwellings on the west. So in conclusion, the zoning bylaw amendment for proposed development of 12 stacked townhouse dwelling units has merit and is supported as the proposal is consistent with the Provincial Planning Statement 2024 and conforms to the Urban Hamilton Official Plan. Supporting technical studies, including a revised noise and vibration impact study and development viability assessment, demonstrate that the proposed residential can be used appropriately and accommodated on the subject lands. With the potential impacts from the adjacent rail corridor and Canadian Pacific Kinnear Yard addressed through a recommended holding provision, which requires noise mitigation measures, warning clauses, and submission of a record of site condition to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. Subject to these provisions and conditions site plan approval, the development represents compatible and efficient intensification and contributes to the city's housing supply. And therefore, we support this application going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. We do have some questions, and we'll start with Councillor Nan. She's online.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you for the overview, Planner. I appreciate it. I think the questions that I had just got answered in the last few notes that you made around the holding provisions. So any comments there from staff in terms of confidence of those holding provisions being met? Noise studies I know can be challenged adjacent to rail lines. So if there's anything there that staff could provide, I would appreciate it.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor, for the question. So for the holding study for the noise, basically we understand that this, because it's adjacent to the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern Rail Line, we have included mitigation measures, which basically includes a 6.5 meter high noise barrier, as well as a crash wall, which are being proposed, and supporting studies, including we've asked for a revised noise study and vibration impact study, which they submitted, and the development viability assessment, which has also been submitted. And a holding provision is recommended basically to ensure that these are externally peer-reviewed to ensure the implementation and all mitigation and required measures are implemented. And these are measured through the site plan control process. And we will ensure that all these have been met and staff are satisfied before the approval goes through.
Appreciate that. Thank you. No further questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We're going to go to Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at some of the comments we got back here from folks in the neighborhood. Mr. Fella had some concerns about 30-foot high wall, 6 feet behind his back fence. Can you comment on that in terms of how's this impacting the neighborhood? I mean, there's some comments there about the sun and stuff like that, and how it's going to block his experience and his, I guess this is an implicit contract people buy into when they buy into a neighborhood. It's zoned a certain way. All of a sudden, people come along and want to change it, and it starts to impact what they believe they bought into. So maybe you can comment on just the impacts it's going to have on the neighborhood.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So the 30-foot wall basically does not impact any views on the proposed development because it's below the proposed development is below the 30-foot wall, and also some of the concerns with overlooking the setbacks proposed and the existing residential rear yard setbacks, including the accessory structures which are already present on the neighboring properties, are appropriate to mitigate any overlook or privacy issues. And regarding the character, the proposed development is compatible because it's predominantly the low density character of the neighborhood. While the area has consisted of single and semi-detached dwellings, the stacked townhouse form represents a modest and appropriate evolution that integrates with the surrounding scale and massing. It also provides a compatible form of intensification and diversifies housing options. And therefore, this proposal was appropriate for the development.
Okay. And secondly, just with respect to the comments from the rail line, they reference a 2013 proximity guidelines. With respect, we're good? Okay, good. So let me just start the question. Yeah, my volume's off. Yeah, I don't have it on.
It's counted.
We're good? Thank you. Thank you, Sal. I'll just start again. Just respect to the rail line, they mentioned a 2013 proximity guidelines, and I know you've gone through a list of things where we've hold back provisions. How are we complying with the 2013 guidelines that they're referencing?
So CPKC, or Canadian Pacific Kansas City, notes, through the chair, sorry about that, the residential development adjacent to the rail operations must be designated in accordance to 2013 proximity guidelines, which you just highlighted. That is why the city has the holding provision for this particular property. These would be ensured through to ensure, because through the holding provision, we will ensure that these guidelines are followed, and that is why we also are asking for an external peer review because of the complexity of the study, so that we get all the ducks in the row before we approve through the site plan control process. So these are all to ensure that we don't have any ongoing rail operation compatibility issues, as well as which they'll have 24 access a day and subject to changes in frequency and intensity over time.
Thank you. So the CPKC rail line is on side with their holding provisions. They're inside with this development now. We've alleviated their concerns.
Through the chair, CPKC do not provide any approvals or do not provide any kind of denial on the development. However, they do provide certain elements or certain instances where we have to include their their conditions on the approval. So these are all addressed through the holding provision. So these conditions have to be met, and these are included as part of the application.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm going to see that there's no more speakers, except I do have some questions, so I'm going to throw it to Councillor M. Wilson to be chair again. Drew, in terms of, I know there's some holding provisions for this, but I had some concerns about the vibration mitigations here. When I was reading through, it says in guidelines for new development near railways, the minimum vibration influence area is recommended to be 75 meters from all corridors, rail corridors. This development's only 25 meters from the line. How will the people mitigate that in order to be compliant?
Through the chair, I defer the question to.
Through the chair, through the application, we did receive a vibration study, and part of the recommendations were implemented through the crash wall construction. So at the base of the wall that will be constructed along the rear of the property, there is a concrete portion that is supposed to be included to help mitigate against the vibration anticipated by the trains passing through. To the point made by Drew, that will also be assessed at the site plan control stage as well. But we do have a study currently prepared and by an engineer that says the proposal is sufficient.
Thank you very much. No more questions? I'll take the chair back. At this point, there's nobody else. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation? Councillor Nan and Councillor Wang. Thank you. Please indicate your hand vote now. That carries unanimously. We do have Matthew LeBlanc here from Urban Solutions in attendance today.
Sounds good. Okay, so good morning to the chair, members of committee, staff, and any members of the public in attendance. My name is Matthew LeBlanc, and I am a registered professional planner with Urban Solutions, here today on behalf of Sam Scrap Metals, the registered owner of the subject lands. We did have a chance to review the staff recommendation report and are supportive of the recommendation for approval. And before I dive into my brief presentation, I just wanted to take a second to thank staff, particularly Jennifer and Drew, for all of your hard work working with us on this file, getting it to where it is today. Thank you. So the subject lands are located in Ward 3 on Cumberland Avenue at the foot of the escarpment. The image on the screen here shows the site in relation to a few notable locations and landmarks in the area. So we're about 40 meters west of Notre Dame Catholic Elementary School, about a half kilometer west of Gage Park, a few blocks south of St. Peter's Hospital, and then as Drew just mentioned in his presentation, we back onto the CPKC rail line. More zoomed in look here, the lot area is 0.3 hectares and it has an irregular T-shaped configuration, as you can see on the screen, where we have 14 meters of direct frontage onto Cumberland Avenue, and then at a depth of about 40 meters, the site opens up to a total width of 77 meters along the rear lot line. Something to note as well is that the site's comprised of two separate parcels. So we have 338 Cumberland Avenue, which is just at the front here. It's currently occupied by a single detached dwelling, which is proposed to be removed to facilitate the proposal. And then 338.5 is the rear portion, which is currently occupied by an active industrial waste management facility. Here's a quick look at the concept plan that we just saw in Drew's presentation. So it's a 3-story dwelling with 12 back-to-back stacked townhouse units. In terms of unit compositions, there are 6 one-bedroom units, 2 two-bedroom units, and 4 three-bedroom units. So 50% of these units will meet the city's standard for family-friendly units. There's proposed to be 18 parking spaces, 15 for residents, and then 3 allocated to visitors. And then as Drew mentioned as well, there's a proposed crash wall along the full extent of the rear lot line to address noise impacts associated with the railway. Here's a look at the landscape plan prepared for our proposal. So there's 19 new trees proposed on site, including those along the entrance driveway and along the rear lot line to act as visual and noise buffers from adjacent residential properties and the rail line to the south. There's a sizable outdoor amenity area proposed on the eastern portion of the site that's proposed to be equipped with benches, picnic tables, plantings, and a stone walkway. And the inclusion of this amenity area allowed us to bump our total site landscape percentage up to 36.5%, which does exceed the minimum zoning requirement of 25%. Here's a really quick look at the elevations facing south. From a policy perspective, we're designated neighborhoods in the Urban Hamilton official plan. And then at the zoning level, as I said, we have 2 separate parcels with 2 very different uses currently. So the first parcel, 338 Cumberland Avenue, is located within the Urban Protected Residential 1 and 2 Family Dwellings District, while the rear portion of the site with that waste management operation is zoned Restricted Light Industrial, both in the former City of Hamilton zoning bylaw 6593. So as a part of this application, what we're proposing is to rezone the entire site to one site-specific low-density multiple dwellings district for both 338 and 338.5 Cumberland. And the site-specific regulations pertain to primarily building height and setbacks. And I'll touch a little bit more on this in a few slides, but there's also a holding provision which is mainly intended to secure site remediation and noise mitigation measures. I heard the ding, so I might skip this slide, but I just want to say we started off during COVID, had a bit of delays through that, and then through the review process, there was a bit of a complex peer review of our noise study, which ultimately led to the recommendation for 2 additional studies, and those 2 studies advised some really great revisions to the concept, which are seen here on the screen. So when we first came in, we had a very different site design. We had 13 townhouse units spread across 2 blocks. At the rear of the site with the drive aisle and parking to the north. And in our current plan, we removed the eastern block entirely to replace it with that sizable outdoor amenity area. We shifted the western block further away from the rail line, which really did help with noise mitigation. We relocated the drive aisle and the parking to the rear, so we kind of flipped that north-south. And then we removed parallel spaces along the drive aisle to provide more space for larger tree plantings to act as a buffer from adjacent uses. Really quick on the holding provision, I just wanted to note that it achieves 2 main objectives, and that secures site remediation and noise mitigation. So back in 2021, we had an environmental assessment completed on the site where boreholes were dug, soils were tested, and contamination was found associated with the current and the past uses. So what this holding provision does is it ensures that we go through the Ministry of the Environment standard record of site condition process, and we remediate the site to ensure that it's suitable for the proposed residential use. And then for the noise mitigation, this provision ensures that all of those noise mitigation measures that were identified through our noise study and the peer review are properly reviewed by staff, external peer reviewers, implemented through conditions of future site plan approval. Here's a quick slide on public engagement. So as we do for all of our projects, our local projects at least, we host a microsite on our company website where people can visit, click on links to download submitted materials, have a timeline of the project, staff contacts and whatnot. And we're actually able to track these engagement metrics. So here you can see on the screen there was a bit of a bump in January, which is when notice of this meeting was circulated to area residents, and then a very large bump in February when Councillor Nan circulated the notice and the link on her socials. So while no public comments were received at the time of the writing of the staff report, there was one letter that was received upon notice of today's meeting, and it dealt with 4 main themes. I'm just going to provide some responses to them now. So it first dealt with tree removals. The supporting tree protection plan that we had prepared identified 19 of 26 trees for removal based on a variety of factors, including poor health, age, and species. And as a part of the proposed landscape design, 19 new trees are being proposed on site, which achieves that city standard of 1-to-1 compensation rate, with prioritization given to native species in order to enhance biodiversity. There were also concerns raised about existing lot grading and drainage patterns. The comment noted that at some point fill had been introduced to the site, which artificially raised it above all the neighbors and resulted in excess storm flows going to adjacent properties. So as a part of this process, the grading plan will ensure that the site is properly level with all adjacent sites and that all storm flows collected on site will be directed into an internal stormwater management tank located underground in the rear yard. Soil contamination is the next theme. We just spoke about that for the holding provision. So the provision will ensure that we go through the ministry's standard record of site condition process, get the site remediated for residential use. And then the last one dealt with privacy, overlook, and views of the escarpment. As noted in the staff report, there's no shadowing or overlook concerns associated with the proposed development. And while we do understand that this is going to be a change from the existing condition, we really do believe that the proposed residential use is much more compatible with the existing neighborhood than the existing waste management facility on one hand, and then on the other hand, what the current restricted light industrial zone could permit as of right. So to close things off, as I said, we think that this is a more compatible use for the lands. The built form achieves a number of city objectives related to intensification. And as I said at the beginning, the lands are designated neighborhoods in the Urban Hamilton official plan, really highlighting that it's the intent of this plan to get them out of their current residential use or current industrial use and get them rezoned for compatible residential built form. And with that, thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Matt. And for the record, you did state that you are in support of the staff report. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And our first speaker is Councillor Nan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and overview. Certainly appreciate the 4 points going over the only written submission from a local resident who probably would have benefited from being able to attend today's meeting to see these mitigation efforts in place, but unfortunately is on vacation today. Also want to say thank you for sharing the information around the fact that you got no other comments from the residents. My office did, and they were all positive. From most of the folks living adjacent and in the neighborhood, they would agree that this is a more compatible land use, and they're happy to see a reduction and a future where the kind of waste management and otherwise ongoing legacy of soil contamination that they have to live adjacent to could be transformed. So appreciate that. One question that I do have, Chair, is in response to the one written delegate or correspondence from the resident that lives adjacent. Could the proponent please speak to the distance between the back of the homes and the proposed build? So you mentioned that there's no shadowing impact anticipated. You mentioned that there's also no overlook impact, in so much that means the residents whose homes are there will still have a view of the escarpment. They'll just also see a building in front of the escarpment. So if you could speak to that distance and how you adjusted your plan to accommodate both sightline and the shadowing.
Certainly. So we did have a detailed analysis on sight lines. I don't know the exact distance to the dwelling on their property, but I know that the proposed building on the subject lands are set back 4.59 meters from that shared lot line. One metric I know that's used to test views is a 45-degree angular plane taken from various points when you have compatibility implications like this. And what we did was we mapped out not only the proposed dwelling building footprint, but the surrounding houses. And we took those 45-degree angular planes from the foot of that house, the neighbor in question, I'm assuming. And with the current height of the building and the proposed setback, that 45-degree angular plane does not intersect the building at all. It goes over, so that's a good indication of, sufficient lighting, overlook, and matters like that.
Thank you so much. And then final, to confirm, this is 3 stories, even though as of right, I believe you could go taller. So if you could just clarify that.
Certainly. Through the chair, this proposal is for a 3-story building. There are no plans to go taller. And the height permission that we're requesting through the bylaw to go to 12 meters is measured to the very tip of the slope roof. And the way the roof is designed, many portions of that roof will not touch 12 meters at all.
Thank you so much. No further questions.
Problem.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. We're going to go to Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Just a question around, when I saw the plan, I do see the big 30-foot wall and all the noise and mitigation that way, but what is the proponent planning to do on the front face of the building? Because sometimes, well, I'm pretty sure that noise doesn't get stopped at walls. They usually go around or up and over. So what are you planning to do in terms of the construction of those townhouses?
Sure. Thanks for your question through the chair. So in terms of the building construction, we've had talks with the architect. A lot of this stuff is dealt with through the future site plan processes, but at this time, we're talking about things like windows with really high STC ratings to ensure that noise transmission is limited. There's also going to be the use of external noise buffers around noise-sensitive spaces, so that's just another kind of glass buffer put around windows to noise-sensitive spaces to make sure that future residents can, enjoy their spaces with the windows closed. There's also provisions that will be included in future tenancy and purchase agreements for central air conditioning and heating so that people can choose not to open their windows and stay hot and cool with them closed. And then also Type D warning clauses just to make sure that future area residences are well aware of the potential impacts from the railway.
Okay, thank you. And just to add on to Councillor Nan's sort of question around the neighbors, where this property in that T-shaped format, they're going to be looking onto essentially the backs of those buildings, but then all of those trees that used to be there that would have covered the view of the scrapyard are now being removed. So what's the aesthetic or what's the opportunity that you might envision how there might be that additional visual separation between the backyard neighbors and the back of the townhouse?
Yeah, certainly. Through the chair, thanks for your question. So you referred to it as the back of the townhouse, which is not wrong, but they are back-to-back units, so it's not like you have that standard back wall with not a lot of units, full brick wall. These are going to be units that are facing north and units that are facing south, so it'll have that, aesthetic urban design interface. In terms of the trees, there is, on the landscape plan that I showed previously, room for at least one sizable tree planting in a location where a tree currently exists to help buffer that area. The existing fences are proposed to remain, and then that 4.59 meter setback that we have makes room for smaller plantings as well.
Okay, thank you. My last question is around the actual remediation of the site, because as it's been mentioned multiple times, it is definitely in your holding provision, but what are your thoughts and your plans on how you plan on remediating that? Because the neighbor has also talked about the fill being added to it, and you did talk about a stormwater management system, so it sounds like you're gonna be digging it all out, but I don't know for sure. So I wonder if you can just elaborate on that a little more.
Certainly. Through the chair, I don't want to step too far out of my wheelhouse here, but I know that this record of site condition process basically prescribes all of the steps that are needed to remediate the site. I know that there have been historic uses on the site for above ground diesel storage, underground gas storage, metals, so that's really what our consultant found when they went and did their test pit studies. And ultimately, in order to put a shovel in the ground and start building this project, you need to satisfy the ministry that the site and the soil samples are up to the standard for the proposed sensitive use. So in terms of how that all works, I'm not too familiar myself, but I know that that process is in place for a reason, and it's further secured through the holding provision that we have in our bylaw.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Several of my questions have been covered off already, but the one I have left is around the trees. So you referenced the fact there's 26 trees removed, and
Sorry, through the chair. There's 26 trees on site right now. 19 of those are proposing to be removed.
oh, I see. So 7 are remaining,
Yes.
and you're adding back the 19.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
No more questions? Thank you. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation from Urban Solutions? Councillor Nan and Councillor Wang, thank you. Please indicate your hand vote. That's unanimous. As we are in a public hearing, I'll now go to the point where, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Come on down. Yes, and come down to the podium. We can appreciate that. Just for the public, we have a member of the public that is making their way to the podium. So welcome, and just so you know, you have 5 minutes, and you can begin at any time you feel comfortable.
I only needed 2 minutes.
Can we have your name?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Neda Krejak. I live right across the road, that beautiful sign. Who created that sign on Cumberland about the process? Is the person here?
I'm sorry?
Who created the sign for development?
Oh, who makes the sign for
Yes.
planning notice?
Yes.
At this point,
Is
I
a
think you're
person
supposed
here?
to make a presentation, and we
I
can
don't
ask
make
questions
that's
later.
my presentation. I like to thank that person who made the sign. If you look at the sign give me a finger every time I cross my front room. Straight view. Give me the finger for last 5 years. That's the one question. About environmental assessment, who is paying for that project, for that cost? Is it taxpayers gonna pay or the owner of the property is gonna pay?
I would say that mostly the property owners are going to be responsible for all the costs.
So the taxpayers are off the hook.
I would hope so. But we will verify
you're not
that
so-
at this
you're not
point
so-
later. But again, your delegation is actually not supposed to be asking questions unless they're rhetorical. And then what happens is the people, your counselor can actually ask those questions to staff at a different
But
point.
this is my question, my opinion. Why you think I'm here because I'm good looking?
I do see that you are.
Oh, my goodness me. Good job I put my teeth in it today, and good job I find them. This is all I have to say, my 2 questions that are not
Okay,
answered.
thank you. And I'm sure your counselor will reach out to you. We have your name, Neda.
I am trying to reach her in the last 5 years. You would think she would answer the door
Yes, I think
once?
she will. She will.
Hi, Nan.
Okay, thank you, Neda.
You're welcome. Oh,
We do have a question, Neda, from Councillor Nan, and so at this point, now that your delegation is finished, she's allowed to ask you questions.
oh my goodness. Go ahead, young lady.
Neda, it's a delight to finally meet you in person.
after so
Thank you so
many-
much for coming in and putting your teeth in this morning and getting down to City Hall to present to us. If I could, through you, Chair, what do you think about this development? If you could just share your insights. Are you looking forward to a change of use going from the trucks and the diesel and all the kind of stuff that's been contributing to a poor environment to one that includes trees and homes? What do you think?
Nan, excuse me. Do you know where is 335 Cumberland Avenue?
Neda, Can you speak
Oh,
into
I'm
the
sorry.
mic? Thank you.
Oh, my goodness, see? I'm
Yeah.
new to that mic.
We all are.
335, it's in a very eclectic neighborhood. I don't know, have you ever visited?
Yeah, I've been
Obviously.
there often.
Oh, knock on my door, we'll have cup of tea. On 355, there is a home that is bordello. Imagine the traffic through the night through that property. None of you know that, but people who live on 335 know about that. The noise, you know, it doesn't matter where you live. It is a noise going to be. But is it for a better? We do need a, oh, how they call it, a housing, you know, in the city of Hamilton. So that's my answer.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So
Okay, Nita, I'm not seeing any other questions from anybody else here on council, so thank you for your delegation today. It was quite a treat meeting you, and I'm going to ask you to take a seat again.
thank you kindly.
you.
All of you have a safe day.
Thank you. I'm going to ask once again, are there any other members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? So that's the third time I've asked this. May I have a mover and a seconder that the public submissions were received and considered by committee and that the public meeting be closed? I'm going to let Councillor Nan and Councillor Wang first and second that. Please indicate now with your e-scribe. Me too. At this point, we're just waiting for our e-scribe vote to come up now. The e-scribe vote's up now. Thank you, Councillor Francis, thumbs up. I think Councillor Beatty's going to put a thumbs up. Okay. That passes 9-0. Thank you. We are moving to 8.2, PE. Oh, sorry. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the report recommendations? Councillor Nan, Councillor Wang. Any discussions? Not seeing anybody. We'll have that e-vote now. Away we go. It's up. It carries 9-0. Thank you. We're going now to 8.2, PED 26037, Bill 30, Working for Workers 7 Act 2025, amendments to the City of Hamilton zoning bylaw number 5200, and the zoning bylaws of the town of Ancaster, the town of Dundas, the town of Flamborough, the town of Glanbrook, the former city of Hamilton, and the city of Stony Creek regarding permissions for worker training facilities citywide. Does the committee wish to see the staff presentation? Yes, we do have that. So we'd like to have Elena make her way down to the podium. Elena Baldessera, who will be making the staff presentation. Thank you, Elena.
All right. Try that again. Okay. Good morning, Chair, Planning Committee, and the general public. My name is Elena Baldessera, and I'm the senior planner on the West team. Today, I will be presenting a brief presentation about the changes in the implementation of the Bill 30 approval. A information report was presented back in January, so essentially this is the implementation of that recommendation. So what you see on the slide here is just a very brief summary of the key dates that were previously presented, the key dates being the approval date when it got royal assent on November 27th, the presentation of the staff response and comments to the changes, and today I'll be presenting the proposed changes to the bylaw, and this is to all 7 bylaws, both the old municipal bylaws and 05200. The summary of the change is to exempt training centers that are subsidized by the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development Fund from the Planning Act. So that would be applications related to site plans, the zoning bylaw itself, but it doesn't remove it from any other act requirements or building code requirements. So here I just have a small summary of what's being changed and how we applied the changes. So as noted, the change is for a general provision, and so it's added to the section of the bylaw that applies to really any zone and any use. The reason for that is the language in the act really just focuses on the agreement itself and not a specific use or area. And so what you see below is the actual language that's being added to each of the bylaws. The highlight is the area to focus on. It's what specifies that it's a building or parcel of land that has to be subsidized in some way within a funding agreement that's entered with the owner and the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development facilities. And the purpose would be identified within that agreement or funding agreement. So that's the presentation I have for you today. There are no mapping changes involved in this modification, and there are no official plan amendment changes required. So it's strictly just a zoning bylaw change. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Elena. And the first questions will come from Councillor Wang.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. Overall, I know that this is a housekeeping item. Overall, I do know that a lot of this is out of our control because of the bill, Bill 60 that just came forward. Overall, I also understand that you're kind of forced to do this kind of work. My concern here is that the greater picture, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of challenge with the Skills Development Fund, where there has been significant amounts of potential mismanagement of those funds, which means that ultimately the knock-on effect is that we're forced to allow for all of these exemptions and allow for all of these planning acts. So my question is around, what is the process in which, if we had to go back and change the use on a particular piece of property, would it still go through the whole rigmarole of the entire planning process, or is there an opportunity to just switch things back just in case there was a shift in the landscape? I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, this is a lot of work to get us here as a housekeeping. What's the work to do to reverse any of this stuff?
So through the chair, if there were changes to the Planning Act, we would essentially look at the regulation if it's necessary anymore, or if it had to be modified, if it was simply just a modification to the previous approval. In terms of the implications of this change, unfortunately, it is written to be at the mercy of what that funding agreement looks like. And so in the process of making this zoning bylaw amendment change, there is a policy document that's currently being crafted, and so we are looking at identifying triggers as to how we would know what that agreement looks like, if there are any, because it does it wouldn't have to go through any Planning Act applications. And so if something came in, it wouldn't need a zoning bylaw amendment to be able to be used for, as stated, what's in the actual agreement. Anything outside of the agreement would be not subject to this act or this regulation.
Thank you, Alana, for answering my question, because I recognize I had a very convoluted question. So I'm thankful. Chair, I'm thankful to staff, because this is one of those times where we're forced by the province to actually do a lot of these changes. But unfortunately, what we have is a very fraught environment these days, especially because we have been seeing significant challenges with the Skills Development Fund. Something like the Skills Development Fund is essentially enabling a lot of these planning processes to move forward without much oversight or any type of checks and balances on the municipality's perspective. So I think that this is one of those challenges where we're definitely that creature of the province, but we don't have enough control to be able to have good planning processes. So again, thankful to Alana and the team for doing this work. It's just challenging these days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Elena, there seem to be no more questions. You may step down from the podium.
Thank you.
May I have a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation, Councillor Wang and Councillor Cooper. Please indicate your hand vote now. Thank you. It's unanimous. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder that there were no public submissions received regarding this matter and that the public meeting be closed? Councillor Wang, Councillor Cooper will indicate that with an e-scribe vote now. The vote is up. And that passes 9-0. I'm asking for any comments on this from anyone now. Thank you, Councillor Wang, for making that abbreviated before. We're going to then, may I have a mover and seconder to approve the report recommendations? Councillor Cooper, Councillor Beattie. Please indicate your e-scribe vote now. The vote is up. That passes 9-0. Thank you. We're moving on to items for consideration. Item 9.1, PED 25255, applications for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 2640, 2646, and 2654 Bimbrook Road in Glanbrook. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in this report? Councillor Cooper, Councillor Wang, any discussions? Councillor Cassar.
Thanks, Chair. I recall this was on the agenda a couple months ago and has come back after some further work. I'm supportive of the housing. I just have some questions around, I think, a rather unique part of this application, which has to do with the adjacent commercial plaza and the drive-through. So I have asked the question of staff prior to this, but so my challenge here is that this is zoned as, this area of Bimbrook is mixed-use, medium-density pedestrian focus, and part of the change in here is to basically double the size of a drive-through taking some land from and adding it to the commercial plaza to double the drive-through and making a very long drive-through. So my first question to staff would be to just confirm the details of what's happening here on that, and then how does that fit into a pedestrian-focused area? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Who on the bench wants to take that?
Good morning. My name is Shaibul Kajjar. I am a development planner with the Planning Division. The application to amend the official plan was to extend the drive-through from the adjacent parcel to a portion of the subject lands. The main reason the applicant submitted this proposal modification is basically to accommodate the existing drive-through, which overspills onto the parking area. And in order to make sure that the drive aisle, in order to make sure that the parking area becomes car-free, pedestrian, from pedestrian safety perspective as well, the applicant proposed an extension to the driveway onto the subject lands, which both the lands are owned by the same owner, who's the applicant. And in order to, while reviewing this application with this proposal, we also went through the policy E4630, which basically has certain criteria that the applicant needs to meet. And with the proposal, the applicant did meet the criteria. One of them being the drive-through cannot be located in other potential locations in the mixed-use medium-density designation, which are not part of the pedestrian-focused street. The second criteria was it does not change the existing and planned streetscape character, and does not compromise the safe, efficient, and comfortable movement of pedestrians. The proposal did meet these criteria, so the staff were supportive of the change and the extension of the drive-through to just a portion on the subject lens, which is approximately 4.5 meters.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And through you, Chair, two topics that we hear, all of us individually in our offices and here in these chambers, is around traffic generation and traffic safety. And I hear the words from staff around how this is keeping vehicles to one side of the parking lot. You look at the concept plan, it is essentially, it's more than half parking or drive-through. I think there's 23, 24 cars in a drive-through, which would be the longest I've ever seen. It does not account for the vehicle traffic coming in and out of the property. So to me, this isn't consistent with the concerns that we have around excessive traffic, and this is encouraging it, and also putting more vehicles in an area that is, zone mixed-use pedestrian focus. So my question to staff would be, because this is bound up in the housing, which I would support, we need more housing, I think that's very, very important, is how to separate those two in order to have a separate decision and oppose the drive-through portion of it while supporting the housing, and understand that that's complicated, but would like staff to speak to how that might be possible. Thank you.
Through the chair to the councillor, my initial thought is just having two separate recommendations within the report. One official plan amendment relating to the development of the multiple dwellings, and then a separate one on the extension of the drive-through. I'm not, and I may need support from clerks to confirm if that would be enough for there to be separate votes.
Just from my vantage point, there's a holding provision on the severance. So if you don't pass the severance, it holds up the whole development. So we can separate them, but if we do, we're shutting, by just voting against the severance, we're shutting down the development. Right? So is that correct, Reno?
Through the chair, Reno Dutt-Bell, Acting Director of Development Planning. That is correct, Councillor. Yes, by doing that, you would hold up the development, the actual housing development on the eastern portion of the property. because the holding is related to the whole development.
Okay, so I understand that. So Counselor, do you have any?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm not popping this question on the floor here. I did ask staff ahead of time and wanted to just have answers in public for public consumption. I think the advice I was provided was that this would need to be given back to staff to discuss further on a resolution, because as to the point here, we would not want to hold up the housing, and it could not be dealt with on the floor here. So just want to confirm back with staff if I understood the answer they gave to me, and how we might go about doing that, if that's correct.
Through the chair, can you re-ask the question? I'm a little
Yeah, what I understood from asking questions ahead of time is that instead of having some separate vote or moving an amendment on the floor, is that staff would require time to continue to work. So a referral back to staff, I think, is what was advised, if I understood that correctly. I just want to understand if that is in fact the proposed path.
If the wish of the councillor is to defer and to refer the report back to staff, where staff could have discussions with the applicant and bring further discussions to planning committee with different solutions, that's an option.
Thank you. Yeah, so my goal is not to stop the housing. That's important. Would want to see that proceed in a timely manner. However, I've stated the reasons why I wouldn't support this as is. So if I understand procedurally, I've spoken to it, I can't make a referral. Could I get confirmation from the clerk if that is correct? Okay. So I'd be at the mercy of any other committee members who would want to do that. But I don't have any further questions.
Okay, so if I'm going to just jump in here as chair, if I want to make comments, do I make comments as a chair, or do I have to pass it to another person?
Are you commenting on what?
Yes. I would pass the chair. Okay, I'll pass the chair to Councillor Wilson. I respect what Councillor Cassar, what you bring to the table here about the traffic concerns, the parking concerns, and the goal of having a walkable community. However, we did have a public meeting. Those issues were brought up: traffic, parking spaces, also issues with the commercial aspect and parking for that commercial aspect. We did speak with the developers about doing something about that. It didn't happen. If you understand Binbrook like I understand Binbrook, there's only one Timmy's, and everybody drives out of town because there's no again, and everybody's lots, I shouldn't say everybody, but lots of people use this. This drive-through actually makes it better for the commercial inside the parking lot, because instead of the drive-through going straight up the parking lot and stopping people from backing out of parking spaces, it now is going to route it around to the front. So now that people will have better access, and the parking in the commercial zone will be safer. So from that area, at this point, I don't support a deferral at this point. I actually support the staff recommendations and the way that it stands at this point right now. So I just wanted to share that with you. I do understand we did have a lot of people wanting more parking space. If we defer this, again, it allows more parking space in the adjacent commercial zone by allowing the drive-through to proceed at this time, and it won't stop the development. And again, you can't do this development without that severance. So I'm going to stand against any deferral or referral at this point, but I welcome and thank you for your concern. And I understand your values, and I applaud them. At this time, I'll take the chair back. Are there any other comments? Okay, so I think if we are to try and honor, okay, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I'm just seeking clarification. Statements were made both by staff and the ward councillor about safety being enhanced. So if I could just have some further daylight on that, and enhanced for whom? Which user or users?
Through the chair, with regards to enhancements of the parking lot itself, currently right now there is the drive-through, which is short, as per our standards. There aren't sufficient enough queuing. So right now, so they're queuing in the middle of the parking lot where, as has been indicated, cars do back up, and then there's interference of the cars. So by providing this extra strip of land and pushing the queuing to the far, facing the property to the far east, adjacent to the property line, that eliminates the interaction of parked cars and pedestrian walking through those cars that are waiting through the drive-through. So the safety factor is they're all pushed to the one side. They're just waiting there. There's no pedestrian interaction there, and there's no parking interaction with that. That's the safety position from the site plan perspective, and that's why they were looking for that extra strip of land.
Thank you for explaining that.
Okay, so I'm just trying, I guess, Counselor, did you want to still defer or have a vote for the deferral? Go ahead.
Well, as I understand it, I cannot put a deferral motion on the table, which I understand, and I knew that when I asked my questions, but I
Okay,
need to ask them.
yeah, you're right, sorry.
But appreciate that. Regrettably, I won't be able to support the application, and we'll see if anything changes between now and council.
Okay, thank you. At this point, may I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the, Councillor Cooper? Okay. Any other discussions? Thank you, and let's indicate your e-scribe vote now. Okay, that passes 7-2. Thank you very much. We're on to 9.2, PED 26008, Telecommunications Tower and Antenna Protocol Update. Does the committee wish to see the staff presentation? And yes, we do. Thank you, and come on down. This will be a presentation by Sebastian Cumming from staff. And just correct me if I didn't say your name correctly, Sebastian. We're just setting up for a presentation.
Yeah, it's in the S drive, PED 6008.
Just working through some technical glitches and finding our presentation online. Okay, thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of Planning Committee, members of the public and staff. My name is Sebastian Cuming. I'm a business facilitator in the Planning Division, and today I'm presenting report PED 26008, Telecommunication Tower and Antenna Protocol Update. I'll provide a brief overview of the legislative framework and approvals process before describing the proposed changes, since the framework is somewhat unique. Telecommunication towers and antenna systems are regulated by a federal approval process and generally are not subject to the provisions of the Planning Act or the Ontario Building Code. The federal approval process is established in Client Procedure Circular CPC 2003, Radio Communication and Broadcasting Antenna Systems, and is administered by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. CPC 2003 contains guidance to proponents on site selection and outlines processes that must be followed respecting consultation with land use authorities and the public. The city acts as a land use authority with whom consultation may be required. However, the city does not serve as an approval authority in the federal approval process. The city's role as a land use authority is administered by the Planning Division and is guided by the Telecommunication Tower and Antenna Protocol, which is proposed to be updated through this report. The protocol identifies relevant application processes, public notification requirements, and guidelines for site selection and design. The protocol was first approved by Council in 2009 and was most recently amended in 2015. The city's role as an owner or leaser of land or buildings that host telecommunication facilities or antenna systems is separately administered by corporate real estate staff and outlined in another document titled The Procedure for the Installation of Broadcasting Communication Facilities on City of Hamilton Properties. And that is a separate document, not subject to changes through this report. Now I'll summarize the proposed changes, beginning with process changes. First, a new application type is proposed. Currently, the Planning Division administers review of telecommunication towers and antenna systems as a minor site plan approval application. However, the site plan approval process does not perfectly align with the telecommunication tower and antenna system review process. So a new application type is proposed, named Telecommunication Tower and Antenna Review, to improve clarity and process alignment. The new application type has a proposed fee of $3,650, which was developed through staff consultation and will ensure full cost recovery. The next process change relates to pre-application consultation. Currently, a formal consultation application is required prior to submission of the minor site plan approval application, but this report proposes replacing the formal consultation requirement with a recommendation to engage in informal pre-application consultation with Planning Division staff, which will provide similar benefits as formal consultation. Now I'll highlight key policy changes. The amendments clarify policy direction within the protocol respecting co-location, which is multiple antennas on one tower, and new towers within 120 meters of sensitive land uses to more clearly encourage co-location and discourage additional towers. The updates amend setback requirements for telecommunication towers to add an additional requirement discouraging towers being located between an existing building on the same lot and an abutting street, so not permitting towers in street yards. The updates change the public consultation requirements to state that wherever the city standards and the federal standards conflict, the requirements resulting in the greater number of recipients, the greater detail of information, or the greater consultation time takes precedence to ensure that public notice and engagement is maximized. The updates require the proponent to provide the city with a record of the recipients of the public notification. And last of the changes are technical changes. The amendments update terminology and definitions to reflect changes to other legislative documents, including the CPC 2003, the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, and Radio Communication Regulations 2021. The updates change the structure of the protocol to better align with the protocols of other Ontario municipalities and the Antenna System Siting Protocol template, which was developed jointly by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association. And the updates add a new section to the protocol titled Jurisdiction and Roles, which provides additional clarity on the roles each governmental body serves in the telecommunication tower and antenna system review process. With respect to consultation, consultation was undertaken with staff in planning and economic development, including building, corporate real estate, development engineering, development planning, heritage and urban design, transportation planning, zoning community adjustment, public works department, including environmental services, forestry and horticulture, geomatics and corridor management, Hamilton Water and Transit Division, and corporate services, financial planning, administration, and policy. Notice of public meeting was posted in the Hamilton Spectator on February 6, 2026. I thank you for attending and welcome any questions.
And thank you, Sebastian. And we have questions coming from Councillor Wang.
Thank you. I appreciate this presentation. Just a question around, actually, if you can give me a bit of an example. I would envision, let's say Bell wants to put up a new tower. So they have to go through a formal consultation process. Part of these new protocol changes means that you're going to try and ask them to put more co-location on there. And then we're going to charge them a fee. And then they're also meant to ensure that it's going to be the most stealth mode possible. So in that way, the antenna is not going to look like a giant piece of metal, right? Okay, so my question is around the co-location. So is that on us to help with determining what kind of co-location is available on said towers? Like, does this become part of our asset management process? Is that something that we can potentially say, like, oh, if there's a new 5G network that wants to come through or 6G network, these are the different antennas because they're on municipal properties? Or is that on Bell to figure out the co-location?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So even prior to them coming to the city, the federal process would direct the proponent, in this case Bell, to evaluate all opportunities for co-location prior to a new tower. So that would include other private towers and any city-owned infrastructure as well. So if it's a city-owned structure, my understanding is that the city wouldn't be determining where the network demand should be or where that should be allocated. However, the federal process does direct all parties to receive and assess requests for co-location.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking about, like, let's say we put an antenna on top of one of our municipal buildings. All of a sudden, that becomes a bit of a security risk because we think about telecommunications and the way things could get hacked or that things could be tampered with. So my question now comes back to who cares for the facility? Who cares for the security around it? Are we on the hook for said things because now that internet is a thing and it's a very important thing? Where is our liability here?
Through the chair, thank you again for the question. Those issues are primarily or exclusively with city infrastructure, and that is the larger, the separate component dealt with by corporate real estate that they lead, and which they outline in their procedure for installation on city's infrastructure. So that is an issue that has been identified, and in previous reports that has been explored and assessed, and there have been recommendations, not just on city buildings, but other city infrastructure. So this report does not, and these changes do not seek to change anything in that respect, and offer no new information in that area. So yes, this deals exclusively with the protocol.
Okay, so my last question through you, Chair, is a question around the cadence of exploring this protocol. Because we know that the situation changes quite rapidly. I envision that any antenna that sits on city property or wherever we have jurisdiction over is a real opportunity for us to increase the amount of potential co-location sites for us to hang more technology. So what is the cadence? Because the last time this was looked at was, 2009? So what's the cadence for us to look at these protocols again, given the nature of today's economy?
Through the chair, yes, it was first established in 2009. The last amendment was 2015, but it was amended each year since 2009. Typically for city infrastructure and for updates to that procedure, where committee or council has desired that, it has typically gone through the Public Works Committee. So if there is, if committee wishes for there to be further exploration or information with respect to specifically city lands, that may be an option for committee.
Okay. Sorry, my last question through you, Chair, is so because you said that it goes through Public Works, is it still you that would be looking at the, or your group that might be looking at policy or protocol changes? Because again, I question the cadence of this, because the nature of how we view this level of infrastructure, which is kind of new territory for us, ought to be looked at quite regularly. So I wonder who ultimately owns this protocol later?
So the protocol rests with planning. So this is the document that planning administers as a land use authority, which is the approvals that would typically go through a planning application, zoning, and so on. For city-owned lands, as I mentioned, corporate real estate is the divisional lead in planning and economic development, and they engage all of the internal stakeholders such as Hamilton Water, Parks, Environmental Service, all, if you imagine the breadth of city resources that are available. So the protocol would generally stay, if approved, it would not be impacted by further changes for the procedure for city lands. It's able to continue unchanged unless there are further changes requested by committee.
Okay, so I understand that planning is the one that will ultimately own the original protocol, but all of the implementation aspect of it would go through Public Works and all of that stuff, right?
Through the chair, with respect to city-owned lands.
Right, okay. Thank you, Chair. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you. And not seeing any other questions for Sebastian. Sebastian, you may sit down. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation by our business facilitator, Kumi. Councillor Cooper and Councillor Wang. Please indicate your hand vote now. Unanimous, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, may I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report? Councillor Wang, Councillor Cooper. Any comments? Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Chair. As you can note from the nature of my questions, the role of infrastructure is not only around roads, sewer pipes, and poles. I think infrastructure is changing, and so one of the areas where I'd really like for us to be a little more deliberate is thinking about how web infrastructure, internet infrastructure, fiber infrastructure gets facilitated here in the city of Hamilton. We are at a bit of a crossroads when it comes to how we deliver services to the rest of the city, but also beyond. I think that there's a real opportunity for us to be a little proactive when it comes to how we are enabling that kind of infrastructure. So I am appreciative of this protocol. I'm appreciative that this got updated today. But I think staff understand that I'm going to be extra on this, and I will be asking for a lot more on this. So I'm thankful for the work that was done here today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll remind you that the adoption of the amended protocol is essential for maintaining consistency with federal regulations and improving the efficiency of the municipal review process. So this report recommends approval of the amendments and the new fee structure, and we look forward to your continued engagement with it. Okay, so I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations of the report. It was Cooper and Wang. Okay, is there any more discussion? Not seeing any. Please indicate your e-scribe vote now. Vote is up. Councillor Kretsch has returned from city business and is looking to vote. Do you want to give an electronic thumbs up?
Thank you. I'll make sure that.
Thank you. And that carries 10-0. Thank you. We're on to 9.3. That's been withdrawn. We're going to go to 9.4, PED 26014, the draft harmonized private tree bylaw and proposed updates to the urban woodland bylaw, woodland conservation bylaw, and tree protection guidelines citywide. So may I have a mover and second to approve the recommendations in the report and receive the written submission? Councillor Kassar? Councillor French, thank you. Any discussions on the item? I'm seeing Councillor Kassar is, you ready to go, sir? Mike's
Ready to
yours.
go, thank you. Yeah, really happy that this report is here before us. Understanding today we're just receiving it and giving direction for staff to go out and do public engagement. So there'll be another opportunity for this to come back after that public engagement and feedback's been incorporated. But just for public consumption through you, Chair, if staff could just first summarize in the report, because there's a lot in there, so for people who aren't going to be able to read it or digest it, what trees are being protected as proposed and how are they being protected? If they could first answer that.
Okay, Director Coit.
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. I also have Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services, and Robin Pollard, Manager of Forestry, up there to support me if I get this wrong. But let me just say, the bylaw, so the citywide urban area bylaw will be protecting trees 45 centimeters DBH and larger, is the main intention. There are a number of exceptions for...
Director, can you just describe DBH?
Draft breast height. So the tree measured at this level, the circumference of the tree measured at that, at approximately human breast height, which is 1.4 meters above the ground.
Thank you.
In terms of exceptions, we've put a number in. If the tree is diseased, if the tree is the tree is identified as a hazard or is dying, the tree is located within 2 meters of a building, tree is found in a nursery, orchard, or plantation, the tree grows on a rooftop garden or inside a building, or the tree removal is required by an order of the city's property standards bylaw, or the tree is an invasive species, such as tree of heaven.
Yeah, thank you. Follow up, and just clarification on terms. I know that both circumference and diameter was mentioned, but DBH is diameter at breast height and not circumference for those of us who have children in school and helping them with math. Yeah, just that clarification. And so that's what's being protected. And then how are they being protected? I have a lot of residents regularly who are concerned about trees that are coming down. So what measures are protecting the trees that have been described through you, Chair?
So through the chair, I direct that to Tamara Reed from Municipal Bylaw, who's, I believe, on the call as well.
Just waiting. Go ahead, Tamara.
Sorry about that. I apologize. Through the chair, Tamara Reed, Supervisor of Operations and Enforcement. The protection measures are through the enforcement of the bylaws that we have before us. They will be required to issue apply for permits for certain size trees. So if you have a tree that's less than 45 centimeters in diameter, you will not require a permit. Anything over that, you will require to make application to the city for a permit.
Okay, so if I could just ask for a little more clarification. So to me, applying for a permit is an administrative process. Sounds pretty simple. So is that all someone has to do to cut down a 50 centimeter, 100 centimeter DBH tree? If you could just please elaborate on that.
Sure. So the process involves an application to the city's department. You can apply for application by person, by email. There's fees for different sizes right now. We're proposing traditionally we would have different fees for different areas of the former municipalities. The current fee will be one fee, which makes it a little bit more user-friendly and avoids confusion to the public. The permit application is then reviewed by municipal law enforcement officers who are particular to forestry management. And once those are reviewed, those are either approved with conditions, or denied.
Okay, thank you. And I couldn't find the fee in any of the report of the appendices. Is that known, or is there a proposed fee in there somewhere that I missed? Through you, Chair?
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. We are going to be coming back in the summer after we've reviewed those fees in terms of the finalized process.
Okay, so it's not there. And then is it known or proposed on what a penalty would be if the permit described isn't obtained? Through you, Chair.
I'll hand that to Tamara.
Thank you. Through the chair, the enforcement measures that are in place for failure to comply with a permit would be similar to a fee for inspection, which is about $400 for a first-time offense, and then a secondary offense that would be $206, I believe. However, if the individual proceeds to fell a tree without that permit, then there are provisions within the bylaw that state that it can be for a first-time offense. For that violation would be a $10,000 fine or $1,000 per tree. Any subsequent fines would be $25,000 or $5,000 per tree. If that happens to be a corporation, those fines increase to $25,000 and $5,000 for the first offense and $50,000 for the second offense.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important information that hopefully is going to be part of public engagement so people understand, because these are the kind of questions that I get asked is, so can they just cut down a tree? They just need a permit. So that's really helpful, and hopefully that's front and center. And one other piece of advice I would just give, and something that I will do to help people understand this proposal, is real world examples of what that means, because 45 dBH, diameter breast height, it's a number. Those in the industry know it. Those who care understand it and can conceptualize it. But I think most people would not. And just as an example, across Hunter in front of Central Public School, there's a 44 centimeter DBH red oak with a memorial plaque. Beautiful tree. It doesn't have leaves, obviously, right now. But that's an example of a tree that would not be protected under this. And then referring back to yesterday's urban forest or state of the urban forest, the report said 80% of our street trees are 40 centimeters or less. So not even up to 45. So just not that the school would cut down their tree that they've dedicated, not that we would cut down our street trees, but just helps visualize the trees that are not protected. And I think that's important for the public to understand and provide feedback accordingly. I think that'd be helpful to give that visual representation. So that's all I had, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cassar. We're going to go to Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and thank you to Councillor Cassar for kind of asking a few of the questions that I was looking to try to understand the on-the-ground reality of what a resident is going to encounter should this proceed forward. Mostly in an attempt to be able to answer questions, because I'm sure there will be a lot of them as we go through this engagement process. So if I could run a scenario and then maybe ask the question, Chair, through you. Mrs. Jones has been in her house since 1980. She and her husband planted a tree when they first purchased the house 40 some odd years ago. And it was a wonderful tree when the kids were young, and they had all kinds of fun in the backyard as a result of the tree. She's in her later years now. Tree's becoming a bit of a maintenance issue for her, or it's a nuisance for whatever reason. She's changed her mind and wants to take the tree out. Right now, there's no provision in many parts of the city, particularly the one that I represent. Mrs. Jones is within her rights to go and have the tree removed at her own cost. I'm wondering if we could just walk through what is the process. I think that it was kind of alluded that there's an application process, but even like Mrs. Jones goes out and has to do this initial measurement, what are staff anticipating that residents are going to be doing from now on when they feel the need that perhaps the tree no longer suits their purposes and they want to make some changes on their private property? From that starting point, what's that first decision point that they would have to go through you, Chair?
Well, let's see if forestry and horticulture have an answer for that.
Through the chair, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture. The first step would be determining the size of the tree to ensure that we understand whether or not the bylaw actually applies. So if the tree is measured at 45 centimeters from ground to where you take the measurement, which this big-ish, if that's the case, then we would run through the rest of the exemptions with, I apologize, I forgot the name of the resident.
Mrs. Jones.
Oh, I was going to go Smith. The exemptions would be, is it hazardous? Is it dead? So at that point, the process would be contact a licensed tree cutter through the, and this kind of information I think is going to be a big piece of what we put out to the public is who are those licensed tree cutters within, general areas. So there's lots of big companies, there's lots of small companies. So they would contact somebody like that, comes in, inspects the tree, measures the tree, and runs through the exemptions with the resident. So there could be something where it's hazardous. It could be, it sounds like it's not dead, so I think that's not an exemption. Whether or not it's within 2 meters to the occupied building would be another exemption that we could run through. If none of the exemptions apply, then the licensed tree cutter can provide the advice of maybe the tree needs maintenance, maybe the tree does need to come down for whatever the reason is, and they would run through applying for the permit.
Councillor Beatty?
Okay, so it sounds like there's going to be also, in addition to significant information sharing with our residents, perhaps we're going to have to engage with industry professionals because they're essentially, Mrs. Jones goes out and she doesn't know how to measure 45 centimeter DVH, hires a professional, then the onus is on that professional to have an accurate measurement to ensure that they're complying within. So these are just thought processes that I think we have to contemplate. If Mrs. Jones decided that she wanted to expand the house so that her kids could come back and live in an additional dwelling unit, how does that interplay if the tree then needed to be removed for the extension of a house through a planning matter?
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. As the site probably would not be subject to a Planning Act approval because it's less than 10 units and small, the same essential process, get a tree cutter to come and look at the tree, evaluate it, and if the tree needs to come out, then it would be looking at a one-to-one compensation. So planting another smaller tree someplace on the site.
Okay. All right. So the typical standard still applies. It doesn't inhibit the ability for additional dwelling units or expansions of the current residential dwelling. Do I have that correct? Okay. The last question I just wanted to go through, we're primarily probably talking about in private property situations, we've got trees in a backyard. What does the enforcement look like? Who are we relying on? Are we anticipating proactive enforcement? We're going around and monitoring tree inventory in people's backyards, or are we relying on neighbors to tattle on them, or like what is the process of determining when a violation will have occurred?
Through the chair, I can respond to that. The violations that we receive in municipal law enforcement are primarily reactive. So we will have someone calling in a complaint for someone cutting down a tree or felling a tree, or for complaints whereby maintenance is an issue on a tree. And then we have officers who have qualifications in forestry matters that will go out and attend to those. And that's how enforcement starts.
Okay, so in some instances, if you have neighbors that are particularly knowledgeable about the bylaw and concerned about tree removal, they may call in. But in other instances, you may have an unequal application of the bylaw. If you have neighbors that are not as knowledgeable and not as interested, they may not call it in. So not 100% coverage equally in every in every situation.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. I'm concerned about some of the impact on private property usage, but I do want to stress that I'm a tree guy. I grow trees, I sell trees, I have trees. I have a number of heritage trees on the property that my family occupies, and so I'm supportive of also bringing a lot of our splintered, fragmented pre-amalgamation bylaws into one standardized approach. I think that's beneficial, but we'll be watching and receiving feedback from this, I'm sure, in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. We're going to Councillor Kretsch.
Yeah, my comments are very similar to Councillor Cassar's comments in terms of how we understand the regulations. This reminds me a little bit of the truck route subcommittee conversation from the last term of council where we were focused on the number of axles. And I think what I heard from downtowners was like that approach wasn't really helpful. And frankly, it's been proved to be somewhat successful, but there's lots of instances now where we have to change signage and reevaluate. So that's my kind of thinking about this, is that yes, it's helpful to have guidance around 44 centimeters, but I think we need to have another kind of checklist of priorities that we're applying. For instance, is this tree a memorial tree of some kind? Is this tree a street tree? Is this tree some kind of other tree? And have sort of that kind of priority checklist as a holistic group, rather than sort of 44 centimeters dominating the conversation from my perspective, because I think that's going to become an issue. I would also say that a question I have is, according to what I see here and my best reading of these things, Appendix A is the new proposed bylaw. Appendices B and C are existing bylaws that will be amended. Is that right?
Through the chair, just let me get my notes here with the amendments. So Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. Both the urban woodland bylaw, which governs woodlots within the urban boundary, and the regional woodland bylaw, which is the rural, have very minor changes. Most of them are relatively administrative, referring to different legislation, updated legislations, and species types.
You got ahead of me, but I was going to go there. But Appendices B and C are the existing bylaws that are being amended, correct? To the report? I'm looking at 3 appendices, A, B, and C. A appears to be the new bylaw. B and C appear to be existing bylaws that are being amended.
So yes, through the chair, Appendix A is a new citywide bylaw that's superseding the 3 existing pre-amalgamation bylaws. The following 2 are existing bylaws that are being updated with minor changes. And then the tree protection guidelines are also being updated. They're existing. They were originally approved in 2010.
Great. I was asking because if you could track the changes in B and C, but when you present this to the public and bring it back, I'd appreciate it, because right now they're not tracked. I can't tell. There may be minor revisions. I couldn't tell you that. So that's the only thing I would ask for to be done, either highlighting or whatever other method you want to use, just to indicate where they are. I think it'll make it much easier to consult with the public if they have a look at that and they say, oh, there are only minor revisions here. This is whatever it is. Thank you. Those are my questions and comments.
Thank you, Councillor. We're going to go to Councillor Francis online.
Thanks, Chair Taddison, and just got a few questions for me. What's the time frame to obtain a tree permit through you?
Through the chair, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture. At this point, it would be fairly quick. I don't want to speak for Tamara's group, and she may correct me if I'm wrong. But we would be looking at 7 days, 15 days, something like that. It's really going to depend on the methodology in which we put out with this, which again, we have not finalized anything. These are all drafts, but I would say 7 to 14 days.
Okay, thank you. And so I just want to know in terms of the fines, can the city retroactively fine you down the road if you're not caught in the act through the snitch line? Would staff look at Google Earth or satellite images or a neighbor's photo? What would that look like? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair, I can answer that for Councillor. The timeline that we have for any trees that have been felled within the prohibitions of the bylaw is 6 months to issue a charge, which means we can go back until the time of the offense by 6 months if we have knowledge of that.
Okay, thank you for that. So in the report, it says, quote, there will be financial impacts associated with adoption of a harmonized private tree bylaw. So my question is, in the middle of Hamilton's affordability crisis where residents are struggling to get by, how does this bylaw, which requires additional funding, staffing, and whatnot, and additional resources, how does that take residents' financial challenges into account? Through you, Chair.
We looking at a rhetorical question there and a statement or for an answer?
If someone's got an answer to that question, I mean, this is a report, Chair, so that are asking for to use tax dollars to approve services.
Okay, we'll go to Director Coit.
Through the chair, that has been a big concern throughout our deliberations as we look at this process to try and minimize impacts on individual homeowners. So you'll see there is a structure that we are looking to use tree cutters, which are required anyway if you're taking a larger tree down, to take a lot of the administrative burden. We'd also look at different fees and fee structures in terms of cost recovery, but we'll give a full accounting of that in the final report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And that's my concern. I mean, residents are already struggling with costs. We're making extra taxes and fees, which are impossible to absorb at this time. And this is exactly the pattern residents are fed up with. Council approves more costs, more staff, more bureaucracy, then blames past councils or senior levels of government for tax increases that this council controls. So I support growing the urban tree canopy, but it must be incentive driven. And we spend how many millions of dollars on communications in this city? There's no reason the tree giveaway can't be better promoted through existing channels. And and let me conclude by just saying here, if council approves, keeps approving initiatives without considering affordability, don't be surprised when residents stop accepting excuses and demand accountability for today's spending choices. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Francis. I just want to clarify something. You didn't say that staff blame past councils, did you? Or did you mean council blames past councils?
No, I don't know what came out of my.
Okay.
If I said staff, I didn't mean staff. I'm saying it was very clear that the blame that's been going around here has been from colleagues, not from staff.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. We now have Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Just a process question. So we're going out for consultation. What I heard here is, we're going to have a new tax called a permit, and we don't have any idea what that's going to be. I think so much about this consultations for people, as Councillor Francis just referenced, is around affordability. 23% tax increase, people feel like their lives got worse. They don't see anything for that 23%. So here we are coming out with this net new, I'll say tax that we're going to put on people when they want to cut their tree down. They got to go and get a consultation, get an expert in. I find it hard for people to really be able to provide meaningful feedback if they don't understand what this is. If this is $5, okay, that's one thing. If we're talking $500, it's another thing, right? So the fact we're going over for consultation, we have no idea what these permits are going to cost, and then we're going to come back with a recommendation, correct me if I'm wrong, but with a fee schedule. So how is this all going to tie in? Because I think so much about this consultation for people, the elephant in the room is going to be, how much is this going to cost me? Like, if I got to go and hire a professional, I got to pay the city an amount, what does all this look like? So if someone could please speak to the process through you, Chair, in terms of how are people going to be able to give feedback on the fee structure if we don't have that when we're going out for consultation?
Director?
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. We've done a scan of other communities. Fees range from free to, I think, $350. That will be a discussion at our public meetings, what an appropriate fee would be and what a comfort level would be. I would point out that it is a bylaw requirement that you do have a tree cutter if you're taking down a large tree in the city of Hamilton. And I would recommend, if you have a large tree, that you are in fact you are engaging a professional to safely take it down. So we're working within that already required process, and definitely, Councillor, that will be part of the consultation.
Thank you. So just to confirm what I heard, we will be coming out with a range of what the fee could potentially be when we have this consultation. We just haven't presented it in this package today. Through you, Chair.
That is correct. That will be discussed at the public consultations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Cooper. I'm going to pass the chair to Councillor Wilson and just ask a couple of my own questions. So again, just for clarifying, and let's go back to the Mrs. Jones example, and this will be up to horticulture and trees. Mrs. Jones walks out, it's 40 centimeters and DBH. She's allowed to take that tree down, no questions asked, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So, and that's a significant size of tree. Now, if Mrs. Jones happens to have her husband's chainsaw allowed, is she allowed to take down that 40 centimeter tree herself?
Through the chair, based on the licensing bylaw, to practice, I hate this word, tree cutting within the city of Hamilton, you have to be a licensed tree cutter.
So any tree in any backyard currently that is of any size, we're not allowed to take our own little, cutting saw out there. We're not allowed to take our own chainsaw out there and cut it. We have to get a licensed professional.
Through the chair, may I respond to that?
Thank
To
you.
clarify. Tamara Reid, Supervisor Operations Enforcement for Municipal Law Enforcement. The licensed tree cutter is in respect to businesses that are in the business of assessing the structural integrity of trees, removing trees, pruning tree branches and roots, removing stumps, or transplanting trees. So that's when the license is required. A private homeowner may take it upon themselves to prune or fell their own trees if they don't have any requirements in the bylaw not to, but it would be strongly suggested that they work with a professional.
Okay, so those suggestions mean that people that are capable, that can do it safely and feel that they want to take that risk on, they're allowed to, but we're recommending that trees that are of a larger size need tree professionals at that 45 centimeter DBH in order to basically protect the public, because a tree of that size, people might not understand the significant heaviness of branches and so forth, and cutting mechanisms of weight, and making sure that the tree doesn't fall on your house and so forth. So basically, this is, as Councillor Cooper was getting at, this is basically about safety, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any more questions. I don't see anybody else on the list here wanting to make comments. Thanks for the clarifications from staff. Again, this is just to go out and do public consultation. One last question. I guess I haven't taken the chair back yet. So one last question. If we receive overwhelming concerns from the community about issues, will that feedback be taken into consideration? And I'll go to Director Coit.
Through the chair, yes, it would, and alternatives would be provided.
Thank you very much. Okay, no more questions from me. I'll take the chair back. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations and report and receive the written submission? Do we have that already? Oh, sorry. I'm going to pull that back. Councillor M. Wilson.
Thank you. Just a single question. Councillor Crutch gave a really good, in my opinion, example of the truck route where we went through a lot of energy trying to figure out what is 4 axles, and a suggestion was made that we contextualize it. I'm just looking for some feedback from staff that that suggestion will be taken when the public consultation, so we'll have an ability to understand, that measurement perhaps. Thank you.
Through the chair, I have in front of me here just came a wonderful image of somebody hugging a 45 centimeter tree that will be included in the staff that will be included in the presentation to make it very clear that size.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Wilson. Okay, at this point, I have the mover and the seconder to approve and receive the written submission. No more discussions. Let's have your e-scribe vote now. I died. And that carries 8-2. Thank you. We are on to 9.5, PED 25070, recommendations to designate 200 Main Street East, Hamilton, First Pilgrim United Church under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Ward 2. And this is referred from April 16th, 2025 council meeting. And Alyssa Golden has an overview.
Good morning, committee. Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead. Just going to give a brief overview and update to help guide any questions or discussion from the committee this morning. And I just have some visual aids to share while I'm going. Just one second. So item 9.5 on the agenda is report PED 25070, recommending designation of a significant heritage property known as First Pilgrim United Church, located at 200 Main Street East in Hamilton. This recommendation to designate was endorsed by Heritage Committee and approved by Planning Committee last spring. However, a written delegation was provided by the owner, the congregation of the church, when this item was considered at council on April 16th of last year, and the item was ultimately referred back to allow for further consultation. In the delegation, I'll note that the congregation did ask that the property not be designated. For some context, I'll provide a brief summary of the consultation on this file to date, and then would be happy to answer any questions the committee may have. Much of this is already summarized in the staff report, except for some additional communications since council referred the item back. So this property has been identified as a candidate for designation and listed on the city's municipal heritage register since 2014. In October 2024, staff began a comprehensive heritage evaluation of the property and sent a letter to the congregation to update them on the progress of this work. A representative for the congregation reached out to staff in November 2024 with some questions about what designation would mean for the congregation. Staff provided a comprehensive response and also arranged to meet with the congregation on site. This took place in January 2025, at which time staff explained the designation process in more detail, spoke to the financial incentives available for designated heritage properties, and what might be expected if redevelopment of the site were proposed. Staff offered to meet again to address any additional concerns that the congregation had and continued to keep them updated on the timing of the staff report recommending designation, including outlining how they could provide formal comment or delegate when the item was considered at Heritage Committee. The staff report recommending designation was endorsed by Heritage Committee and approved by Planning Committee, as I mentioned. And then the congregation then provided a written delegation when this item went to council on April 16th, requesting that it not be designated. Council referred that item back to Planning Committee, the goal being to try to find another date when the congregation could attend and speak further to their concerns about designation. Staff was in communication with the congregation and was tentatively scheduling to return this item back to Planning Committee last June. Unfortunately, the congregation was not able to meet as planned and continued to indicate that they did not have capacity to meet or attend Planning Committee meetings during the subsequent communications throughout the end of 2025. In December 2025, staff were made aware that the property was up for sale. We reached back out to the congregation and also reached out directly to the realtor for the listing. Staff did follow up with the realtor and the congregation, advising them of the timing of this reporting back to Planning Committee today. And to conclude, at the end of this year, due to the provincial legislative changes, this property will be automatically removed from our Municipal Heritage Register and will no longer have any protections under the Ontario Heritage Act. And staff do acknowledge the congregation's concerns regarding designation and have offered to meet with any prospective purchasers to clarify what designation means, what financial incentives are available to support retention and potential adaptive reuse of the church with a new owner. And if council approves the recommendation to designate, the owner would then have the opportunity to object to that notice of intention to designate. It would come back through Planning Committee for further consideration. And if we get to the point of passing a designation bylaw, there's also appeal rights at that stage to the Ontario Land Tribunal. That concludes my summary. I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
We're going to go to the ward councillor from Cameron Kretsch.
Thanks. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts as the city's representative on the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee. I think the staff's done everything that they can do to try and reach out to the congregation beforehand. I used to know a lot of the folks in the congregation back in the day, whenever back in the day was, and that congregation has changed quite a bit in that time. The folks who had the capacity to lead some of this work and were doing this work aren't around anymore, and so there's some issues there with the congregation, I know for sure. And I think at this point we have to proceed with this, especially as the property's up for sale and it's at risk. I'm happy to move this motion. Talk to my colleagues at the Municipal Heritage Committee. People seem to be on the same page. I think there's nothing more the city can do here. We've given quite a lot of time for our conversation to happen, and the result of that was to put the property up for sale. So I think it's quite clear where everyone stands on the subject, and we have a duty of some kind to protect this building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Discussion around the congregation's concern predates my arrival on council. If you just summarize at a high level what their concerns were, through you, Chair.
Through the chair, so as a part of the previous conversations with the congregation, they had indicated that they were looking at essentially closing up the congregation and selling at the time of our early conversations. So staff did advise what designation would mean for a new prospective purchaser, that it would not prevent change for the site, but that it would help manage that change and also provide financial incentives to allow for retention and adaptive reuse. There was no formal objection received at the time of staff preparing our original report. There was concern raised through those conversations and those responses given that I just outlined. However, at the time of council last year, the delegation, written delegation that was provided just indicated that they requested to not be designated because of the sale process and how it might be impacted. So staff did address those concerns, clarified that there is nothing under the Ontario Heritage Act that should be preventing sale, but really what that would mean for, depending on a prospective purchaser, what their goals are for the site, how designation would impact that process.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Meakin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking back when we had a lengthy discussion with representatives of the congregation here who were talking about the need to access dollars to finance a substantial alteration in the form and style of their existing ministry. And I seem to recall that there was talk about a hybrid, part of it being designated, part of it being, oh, I'm on the wrong church? Yeah, okay. I'm done, thanks.
Well, thank you, Councillor. What we'll do then is,
Sorry about that.
I'm not seeing anybody else. I'm at this point where may I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report? Okay, Councillor Kretsch and Councillor Wang. Let's go to the e-scribe vote now. Councillor Wang. Okay, that vote wins 9-1. With moving to 9.6, PED 26022A, remnant commercial zones, addition of lands to the commercial and mixed-use zones, transit-oriented corridor zones, and the utility U2 zone in zoning bylaw number 5-200, CI 25J citywide. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report? Okay, we'll go with Councillor McMeekin and Councillor Wangs, the next person. Is there any discussions on this item? And I see somebody is coming in here, but it's a blank. Oh, Councillor Jackson, welcome today, and we'll let you go first. No, everybody backed off to honor your presence.
I know why this committee appointed him as chair this year. Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Taddison. To my committee colleagues, sometimes good outcomes take time. Just to harken back a couple of weeks, I appreciate the unanimous support to refer this matter back. And as you can see on page 3 of the report, under analysis for 1725 Stone Church, 140 Mud Street East, I'm pleased to see that staff, upon the review of the site plan application for the urban, official urban architectural urban design guidelines submitted earlier, staff had time to review, and staff are now recommending that the additional H holding provision can be removed. And I'm pleased with that outcome. I want to thank again Acting Chief Planner Fabic and Senior Planner Alana Fulford and in Site Plan Manager Kenny, and hoping for committee support. Thank you very much, Chair Taddison.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Councillor McMeekin.
Thanks. I'm on a roll today somehow. I just want to say thanks as well. This was raised initially and referred back, which I was appreciative of, and Councillor Jackson then took command of the issue and consulted with the proponent, wanted the holding removed, and he did a great job working with staff, and he's typically well prepared on these issues. So thank you, Councillor, and I echo your remarks praising staff for their thoughtful and sensitive response on this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I see no more discussion. Please indicate your e-scribe vote now. Vote is up. Thumbs up from Councillor Kassar. And that's a overwhelming 10-0. And I think that will make our Councillor Jackson very happy. Great. Now we're on to motions. 10.1, use of Saltfleet Avenue for blocks 1 and 2 servicing strategy areas. Councillor Beatty, will you introduce your motion and your seconder? Oh,
Thank you, Chair, and you are my seconder, so thank you for that. I just wanted to, I'll skip to what we're trying to accomplish here. I think that members have had an opportunity to read this over. Some may be wondering, why is this here? So this has been an interesting process, and if you follow the naming process for streets in our city and growth areas at all, it's a bit of I would classify it as a peculiar process. There's a pre-approved pool of names for particular parts within our city that are available for the developers in a particular area, pre-approved to dip into and pull these names out of the hat, and that basically is how streets in growth areas gets named. Where this caught my attention is the naming of a street in the Winona area. Part of Block 3 within the Stoney Creek Urban Boundary Expansion Area, Starfire Crescent. And I wondered, well, what the heck is a Starfire? And how does that name have any historical resonance with the community? And it got me pondering. So I started kind of poking around through the process, learned what the process is, and essentially, as these new streets are coming on stream, the developers just reach into the hat, they pull out a name that might suit their needs, might not, may have historical resonance, might not. And that's fine, I'm not challenging the process, but the street in question here is going to be a major thoroughfare. It's a collector road that goes from Fruitland Road to just west of Glover, runs in parallel to Barton Street and Highway 8. It's a pretty significant street. And so I wanted to make sure, and following in the tradition that we've had in Stoney Creek of having names of meaning and names of substance, that this had some resonance too. So Salt Fleet, most of you are probably aware, is the name of the previous municipality. Predates amalgamation by the first round of amalgamation that happened in the early 1970s when the village of Stoney Creek, the township of Salt Fleet, were amalgamated into the town of Stoney Creek. We are losing some of that as we develop and we grow in this area. We just demolished the Salt Fleet Community Center, so we've lost it there. The Salt Fleet Arena, although not immediately slated for closure, I don't want to go through any of that again, is eventually scheduled to sunset and be replaced by a new growth-related facility to be built within the Scooby area in Block 1. So there's another example of the name slowly disappearing. So I wanted to ensure that this name has an opportunity to be maintained in perpetuity for all time, essentially. Of note, the predominant north-south collector road has already been designated as Gordon Dean Avenue. It's in Block 1. Gordon Dean was the last reeve of the township of Salt Fleet, the first mayor of the newly formed town of Stoney Creek in the early 1970s. Later went on to become a member of parliament. He was a lawyer, he was a farmer, he was an all-in-all good guy. We'll have an opportunity now to have an intersection of Gordon Dean Avenue and Salt Fleet Avenue, which I think is fitting. And I'm hoping for universal adoption of this motion to allow this little piece of our historical Stoney Creek content to live on in perpetuity. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor Beatty. And as a former high school student in Stoney Creek, I recognize the importance of Salt Fleet as a name down there because I basically played hockey, I coached hockey, I spectated at the Salt Fleet Arena. It's a name that needs to be remembered, so thank you. Let's please indicate your e-scribe vote now. That carries 10-0 in spite of our difficulties. We passed it. Okay, private and confidential. Does the committee wish to go into closed session for item 12.3? I'm looking around. I'm not seeing any takers for that, so I'm going to go to page 22. Thank you. I guess, may I have a mover? This is for 12.3 LS 26004, appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lands located at 1630 Main Street West and 69 Saunders Boulevard for lack of decision on official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, applications Ward 1. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve? A, that report LS 26004 be received and remain confidential. And the movers will be Councillor Wilson and Councillor Wang as seconder. So please indicate your e-scribe vote now. Wow, you're close. Did you see my yes? Yeah. Okay, that vote carries 10-0. There being no further business, we are adjourned at 11:57 a.m.